I'm willing to pursue any avenue of inquiry. And when you talk to 9/11 theorists, they always say, I'm just asking questions, I'm just using the empirical method, I'm just being scientific. And I respect that. As I've admitted earlier in this interview, governments do lie. They do it for their ass covering purposes. It's common. And so it's especially important for journalists to ask questions. For me, the line is when something becomes a conspiracy theory is when it's clear that the person offering the alternative theory is locked in their own dogma and they're dismissing any evidence to the contrary, which is, say, any evidence that backs up the officially promoted theory, and that they keep enlarging their conspiracy theory and enlarging their mandate to, quote, ask questions.
One thing
every time a contrary authority is raised.
Do you understand that the 9/11 family members they submitted hundreds of well-researched questions to the 9/11 Commission to answer. They only answered 30% of their questions.
Okay, but let me step back from that a little bit. I agree with you that from a moral point of view, it is extremely important to address concerns from survivors.
It's not just about survivors. I mean, there are a multitude of questions. There are many things that the 9/11 Commission either omitted from its report or distorted and so on and so forth. I mean, the mandate of the 9/11 Commission was to give a, quote, full and complete accounting of the 9/11 attacks. And every whistleblower that they didn't speak to or every avenue that they didn't look into, it just shows that they failed in their mandate. And, there's a multitude of problems with the 9/11 Commission. But
one thing I found as a journalist is that there is, as human beings, there's a tendency to assign great moral value to the questions asked and the testimony and the beliefs of people who are directly affected by tragedies. So if it's, EMS first responders or family members of victims or, injured victims themselves who step forward, and that we do have a tendency to assign them a lot of moral credibility. Unfortunately, what you do find as a journalist is sometimes these are the people who are actually the most least informed. And one example, for instance, is, the false movement to link vaccines to autism. Some of the biggest proponents of that theory are parents who have autistic kids. And one of the reasons these false theories about vaccines and autism have been promulgated in the media is because reporters want to believe the parents. They think it's morally important to believe the testimonials of the parents of autistic kids. But those are often the people who are the least informed because they're so upset by the situation, because they're so personally affected. They latch on to nonsensical theories. So in some cases, sadly, this is a sad thing to say, they're actually the last people we should be listening to. Because sometimes they're the most emotionally vested in the answer to the questions.
You couldn't be more wrong. Let me. Do you know who the September 11th advocates are?
They used to be called the term. I forget. It was a group of women who were especially prominent, and I forget the name that the media gave them.
They were referred to as the Jersey Girls, and it was it was 9/11 family member Sally Regenhard that actually called them that. I want the audience to know who these women are. They are 4 widows who lost their husbands on 9/11. They are essentially responsible for the creation of the 9/11 Commission. They were part of the 9/11 Family Steering Committee. They worked with the staffers of the 9/11 Commission. They provided hundreds of well-researched questions for the 9/11 Commission to answer. They attended every public hearing of the 9/11 Commission. And before and during the 9/11 Commission, they were in the media a lot. They were part of the process from the very beginning. I want you and people to understand that these aren't just any 9/11 family members. They went through hell and know what they're talking about, or at the very least should be listened to. So for you to say that they're the last people we should be listening to, I think that's absolutely absurd. And incidentally, I heard you say that 9/11 truthers or advocates for 9/11 justice started appearing after it was found that there were no WMD in Iraq. Do you know that the family members are actually technically the first members of the 9/11 truth movement? Do you understand that? Do you realize that?
I can see how that, based on how you define the term, that would make sense.
The September 11th advocates have released so many press releases over the years, so many that would have been world-changing had they gotten the attention that they deserved. Instead, the corporate news has neglected them for the most part. That is abhorrent. Attached to this video is a PDF I put together years ago that has a collection of many of the September 11th Advocates' press releases. I guarantee you will find them interesting.